Hi everyone, Simon from Horoma Studio. Today we're going to have a look at this new Teardown submission that was done for a competition on a sort of a camping theme. So let's get started. So there are like many things going on in this image, which is like the main comment I'll have first is that it is a bit hard to grasp the overall intention, if I may say. So we understand that we have this sort of like camping happening in front of this building here with the sort of theme that is explained on the banners here. And we have this sort of like quite interesting building here with a simple architecture, but like nicely like blended in the background, or like this context, if I may say, like this black metal. So it is quite interesting, I think. There are a couple of things I think that could be fun. I think the main issue here is the lack of hierarchy in the lighting. So basically what you can see here is that you have the artificial lighting going on in the building here. You have natural lighting coming from the flames of the campfire, and you have the natural lighting coming from the sun that you can see on the grass here. And the issue, if you put like the image in black and white, for example, is that you can see that the value of all of this is sort of homogeneous, which means that instead of having the light helping you, leading your eye on something of interest in the image, you sort of like just wander around because you don't really know what to look at. So I think this is an issue in any image, because light is part of composition and it's supposed to help you understand what's going on and sort of like make you focus on what's interesting. So you need to have a sort of point of focus, and then you can have like other details of stuff happening. But if too many things are happening and have the same hierarchy, then it means you don't really know what you're doing. I mean, like as a viewer, you don't really know what you're supposed to look at. So to fix this lighting issue, I think the most interesting thing to do would be to actually have a lower sun, which would have like an impact that is interesting, because instead of having this part here that is lit by the sun, you would have like a much darker image, or at least a much darker foreground. So you could have like the sky could still have like this sort of this type of light, but the sun would be not above the horizon, but really just right on the horizon, which means that you would not have cast shadows here. The result would be quite interesting, because it would mean that the only light you would get in the foreground would be the fire light that you have here, and then you would have this sort of contrast with the artificial light in the background. So this is something I think could be interesting to work on. The other interesting point that we have here is the moon that was just suggested in the sky here. And I think if you're doing the rendering like slightly later in the day, the moon could actually catch some light, which means it should be actually like lit basically. So you would have like these sources of light, these ones here, and the moon, which, well, it's not a source of light, but you see what I mean. The other interesting thing I think that could be done is, I think the issue regarding the framing at the moment is the sort of central perspective on this point here, which is really perfectly legible, because you have like the whole grass is clear basically, so you have no obstacles here. And then suddenly, for some reason, the first thing you see, and especially if it's white, which is like a color that actually catches the eye quite a bit because it's quite bright, the only thing you see here is basically a sort of arrow that leads you to this car, which is not really an interesting point. So this is something I would be careful with. So basically I would just remove that car, or like make it more on the left or whatever. And then you can choose to have like basically since the frontal view is in front of this part here, I would basically try to add details and maybe more artificial lighting in there, because it is lacking a bit of interest. I think basically in terms of concepts, what could be interesting, or at least like the way I read this image, is that you have a sort of discrepancy between the camping part here and the sort of building here. And you have like many contrasts going on, which is quite interesting, because you're going to have like natural lighting here and artificial lighting here. You're going to have, you can have like warmer light or warmer temperature because it's like natural, like from the fire camp. And here you're going to have like colder lights because it's some sort of like office building or whatever. Either way, it's going to be quite cold. And what else? You could also have like this difference between like maybe the tent could actually have like maybe artificial lighting inside, so that it sort of like act as a lantern. And here you would have the sort of same effect with like light coming from the inside of the building. So this could be something I think quite interesting. And the good thing is that in terms of composition is that you have this sort of horizon and like the sort of tents and whatever and the building, and then you have all these trees that are cutting through the composition, which is quite nice. I think in terms of composition, this guy here is not working because it is cutting from the brightest part that we could have here, which could be a point of interest. So I would definitely not put the kid here. So this is something we'd keep in mind. Just as a suggestion, I'm wondering if, I'm not completely against the vertical format here because I think it can work, but I would still suggest that maybe it would be more interesting to have an horizontal framing. And that way you could have like a wider range of tents that would be going like on all your lower part of the image. Some of them could be lit from the inside, others could be cold, could be like normal, whatever. And then you could have like civil fire camps going on, and then you would have this like trees going through your image. Maybe you could actually have some of them really in the foreground, like it could be like slightly blurred and whatever. And then in the background you would have this building again. So having it more like in a sort of scenery thing would, I think, work more. And the thing is, like the other effect that you could achieve by having a more landscape one is that you could scatter your tents more, because here everything seems super packed, which is not really like, it doesn't seem like it's a nice place to put your tent. Whereas it does, like you could imagine that there's like a nice park here. And also like, even though I get the idea of having like kids coming from school or whatever, I wouldn't put that many buses, because the discrepancy between this sort of artificial part here and natural part here I think is enough. So I wouldn't add too many cars. Another thing that is like, I want to say unrelated, but it's definitely some sort of interesting, like something to keep in mind, is that this banners, like basically in terms of perception, there are two things that are the most important in composition or like in perception from a viewer. It's the face of people, which is the first thing you recognize, and the second thing is text, which means that you have to be extremely careful on how you use them. Here it's fine because we don't see the face of the kid, but just the back of his head. So we're not too attracted to this guy. This one here maybe a little, but actually the bright white letters on these banners are extremely, like, catch the attention a lot. And even though it's not necessarily a problem because it helps understanding the concept, which is like noche de campamento. So basically it's like the night of camping or a camp night. But the thing is, just in terms of design, it is not the best thing not the best way to display it. So every time you're doing like design for like just small banners, always go with like the simplest design you can go. And basically the simplest design is, don't go with like the marquee way. So instead of saying like camp like that, you want to write camp like that, because like there's basically studies on this that show that people read more easily a text that is rotated rather than a text that is written in vertical. When it's that big, you have to be careful of what it's written, and you have to make sure that it's legible. There's an interesting study. I'll put the link in the description that shows like basically how easily people read this type of thing or rotated. It's pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, in terms of lighting, I think I'm good. I mean, like I've said enough of what I think is fine. In terms of the cutout, I would be careful with like the consistency, because you can see here that the cutout is not like it's super rough, and on the contrary, the guy here is super blurry, which is sort of makes sense, but still it's not the most. I would just get rid of this guy and integrate these people a little bit better. And also the good thing that could be, I think, better if you have like a darker sky and like it's later in the day, is that all your people are going to become some sort of silhouettes, and they're only going to be lit, like they're going to be backlit by the artificial lighting here. Are they going to be lit by the fire of the campfires, which is going to be interesting because you're going to have like this sort of warm light, but just on like part of them. So it could look pretty cool. The smoke here is definitely done in post-production, which is fine. I think it doesn't add, I mean, two things is like, since we don't see the fire here, it is a bit weird to not like, we do the connection between the two, but we'd like, it would work better if we had like the actual whole fire here and the smoke. And the other thing is that the smoke is actually could be fun when it starts to be thicker, so that you actually have like the light of the fire that is sort of lighting the base of the smoke, and then it fades in the air, and then maybe you have like a bit of natural light going through, but it's like details that it's really hard to do in post-production, so I wouldn't even care about that. But beside that, again, regarding the details, always be careful with the type of modeling you have in the foreground. The tents here is nice, like you have nice folds or creases, so it works nicely. Here it's the same. I mean, maybe it's actually the same as this one, but whatever. Here it's fine because it's further. This one here on the left is really not a decent model for a foreground element. Like you can see the thing here is a bit like too low polygon, or like not enough details. So I wouldn't use that kind of thing. But beside that, I think it's a good image. I mean, like overall the texturing is nice. It's really just a matter of, I think the lighting is just not properly chosen for what was what was tried to be achieved here. So it would definitely have like a big impact to slightly change it. I think I'm done. Sorry it took longer than expected. I hope you've learned some interesting stuff in the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, feel free to subscribe so that you get the notification for the next upcoming teardowns. Of course, if you have your own image and you'd like a critique on, you can use the link in the description below and send it so that I can have a look at it. So yeah, thanks guys, and see you later.